Good morning, guys. Jim Squares here, bringing you some more money solutions for your life to make your life better, and so we can all get better. And this is what I've learned over time about IRAs and specialized things. But first, before we talk about that money hack, remember to like and subscribe down below, share with others so we can all help each other out, and we can definitely get better as we move forward on these things. So now, if you think about typically investments, so when people talk about investments, they say, oh yeah, well, stocks, mutual funds. But what I'm going to be talking about today is a self-directed IRA. And it could be a Roth IRA or traditional IRA. It doesn't matter. It's pretty much the same here. But this is for people, this is a perfect tool for those who consider themselves experts in fields of business and consider themselves in a position to predict exactly where a business is going to make some profits. So for example, essentially if you think of an IRA, right, where you put money either tax deferred or a Roth IRA where it's not taxed to all the growth. So this is something where you can essentially control where that money goes. You can put it against things, you can invest in things like tax liens, so around real estate, crowdfunding, some of those things online, where you can give money to IRAs or those are the REITs. You could invest in a small business, a startup, piece of land, LLCs. I would be careful of the LLCs and the REITs, and I'll get into some other stuff and my story of how I've used these tools. But these are great things. And essentially, what you do is you put money into an IRA, or if you've already have it, then you can transfer it over to one of these firms that I'll talk about, and we can go into more information around those. You can invest in anything essentially that you think will earn you a profit. Pretty much anything, as long as it's not used for personal use. That'll be like, I can't buy a vacation home and then go stay in it. You could buy the vacation home, but you can't stay in it. So that's some of the rules that they have there. So there's some prohibited assets are things like collectibles, baseball cards, stamps, art, and life insurance contracts. And that's, though, besides those three things, everything else is pretty much open game. Now, my story around using a self-directed IRA. What I did back in 1998 or 1999, something like that, somewhere around there. So I had an opportunity to invest in a startup. And I said, hey, I have money in a Roth IRA. I'm going to earn way more money at the startup. So I am going to invest in this startup with this IRA money. And that allowed me access, essentially, to do that. So what I did is I transferred a bunch of assets over to a firm, which I'll tell you which one I did. And I invested in it. And, the guy's telling me, he's like, yeah, things are going well. Things are going great. Things are going great. And then 2000 came around, 2001, and he didn't do so great. So if he would have done great, I would have had a significant return on that asset or that special, startup, and I would have actually made a ton of money from it and not got taxed on it because I had moved Roth money over there where it wasn't taxed. So where I had already been taxed, and so you wouldn't get taxed anymore. So I could have made 20 grand and no tax is essentially what would have happened to it. Now, yes, I can't touch it for a long time, but that's what I was planning on doing. Now, I did not. The business went under, so I lost that money, which was very unlucky. I did talk to a lawyer to see if I could get some recourse back, but then he ended up saying, essentially, the guy had so many liens against all of his property, essentially I should have talked to the lawyer first. And yeah, you learn. So that was a very unlucky lesson. It was a hard pill for me to swallow. That bothered me for a long time. It hurt some other relationships I had, but now it's like I look back at it and it was a great learning lesson for me. That's like, okay, that's not something I'm going to do again. But now I have this tool that I know how to use. I know how to get money into a self-directed IRA. I know how to invest in something with a self-directed IRA. So if I ever have a really good opportunity, I can do it because I know how to do it. So that's my story around it. I'll show you which one. So we'll go into the different firms. But the first, the firms that don't offer it are typically Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab. I don't believe they offer it. I know I did confirm with Vanguard. I called them, said, hey, do you have self-directed IRAs? And you have to be careful when you talk about these things, and you have to say, I want to invest in things that are not mutual funds or not ETFs, not stocks. I want to invest in a piece of land. I would give them that specific example. Can I invest in a piece of land? If you have a different firm than Vanguard, then you can ask him that, and then that will key you in right to where you have to go. Because most of them will say no. Most of the big firms, they just don't touch this stuff because it's a much more high risk, much more high profile, and so that's the thing that you need to be careful of. So the three firms that I did find, like I looked up two other firms. The firm I used was Direct Ira, and then two other firms are Broad Financial and Entrust. So those are the three ones, and I actually created a list of fees, which we'll switch over to right now. So the fees that we have that are allowed here. So now what I did is I tried to, there are so many fees. This is what you have to be careful of this stuff. You only want to do a self-directed IRA if you have something that you know you're going to make a good amount of money, a good return on. It has to be really good. Like I would say over 10%. I wouldn't mess with anything less, just because the fees will chew you up. But unless you're holding it for a long time, then you might change your mind, depending on what it is, right? How big your balance is. So you'll want a balance. But you could see, there's an established fee, and it varies from $50 up to $13,000. And I'll show you where these numbers came from. There's also a termination fee, so that's like $300. Annual fee, like $150 to $300 to this one says $2,000. And then there's transaction fees, and then there's a wire fee, and then there's a mail fee. There's other fees, and there's research fees. And what I tried to put down is like when I looked at it, this is what I would use these things for. In general, the one I like is the one I used. I have no affiliate, no relationship with them, but directed IRA. And that's the one I used before. That worked out pretty well. And I knew the fees I was getting into. I knew whatever fees you think you're going to pay, assume more, because they're probably going to be more, because there's certain things you just don't think about when you're into this. Broad Financial was a new one, and Entrust was a newer one that I hadn't seen. But so I thought most accounts would benefit from the direct IRA. Those who have a long-term need for the account, or need to write a lot of checks. Broad Financial looked good. Entrust, the only thing I saw positive about them was their wire transfers were pretty good, but I mean they were close to direct IRA. I think the reason that they beat direct IRA and wire fees or wires was they're international. They charge the same as domestic, where direct IRA splits it apart. That's what makes comparing fees on these things really difficult. So I'll show you. And I'll put all these links to the show notes. But in here, is the fee schedule for direct IRA, and you can see, how it's established. The annual account fee, definitely something you want to think about. Then you can kind of look through quickly around what are some of the transaction fees, asset processing fees, and this will also give you ideas of what people buy, precious metals. I'm sure you could buy Bitcoin in here too, I would think. Mail fees, processing fees, and then here's a bunch of the other fees. So if you want to convert your traditional IRA to a Roth, it costs you $100. I'm not sure what this is, but you'd have to look it up. So the way to stop payment for checks, $35. Not sufficient funds, $25. Paper statements, $20 a year. All these things, they'll just grind your return. So you want to minimize those. But still, this is the one, even with all these fees, I felt like this is the best one. We're going to look at Broad Financial now. And this is where, so what you're looking at here is it's lower down in the page where it says fee due over time. Right now, so here's what's interesting. So here's where it says 3-year total and 10-year total. So you could see this checkbook model, while it has upfront, the setup fee is $1,300. Over the long term, it will cost you less. So if you're going to hold it 10 years or longer, this might make more sense. But I still would look at the direct IRA, because most of the times you don't need it that long. It just depends on what it is that you're doing. If you want to look at 3-year total, then you could see how they almost equivalent out. Checkbook model still makes a little bit more sense, but if you want something more short term, that does not make sense. And all of them are different with their checks, how they handle checks. So like custodial fee, see you have to pay a setup fee. So why they don't have this as merged as that price, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. But now here, there's no fees for this really expensive one for purchasing assets, expense payments, or property value. But there are in this account. And so you could kind of go down here and just get first year, like what's the total? And then the second year, okay, what are the things that I have to pay for? And the third year, what do I have to pay for? And you can see this one drops down like crazy. This one goes up high, drops, and then goes up high again. Now why? Who knows? But these are all things that you'll want to look at. This is another account. And then this is Entrust, which is the other one. This looks much more similar to the direct IRA, though it is they're all fairly complicated. Here's where this one gives you special discount on crowdfunding. So that one's okay, I thought, but I still thought direct IRA beat it. And then if you have assets, they charge based on how much your assets are. So here's how much they're going to charge you in fees. And then you can go down, and here's another list of all the different things you could purchase. Real estate. I'm not sure why you would buy real estate because you get a lot of tax advantages for not doing it unless you're going to get a huge return. But if you're good, that's the only way I could see this being beneficial. But even then, if you buy real estate in it, it gets very limited that you can't go there and use it. But if you do have it outside in your taxable account, you can. So now technically you probably have to claim some deduction, but I don't know much about that. So I'm just telling you what I know of. I think you can also put LLCs in these things. Now how that works, I did not do that yet. I'm planning on, maybe, I'm thinking about that. But again, here's a bunch of other fees, and you can see all the fees that they charge you about: re-registration and transfer agents, account termination, $250, all this stuff you're going to want to think about. So definitely, I highly recommend you look through these things and be careful if you do want to decide to do this, because it is a really cool account if you have the tool that you want to fill it with. So it's really giving you that opportunity to invest in something that you can't with the other mainstream brokerage firms, but these guys are allowing you to do it. So yeah, that's what I got. If you want to learn more about building wealth, I suggest you check out my other video, 4 Ways to 50 Million. And yeah, hopefully things are going great for all of you. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with others. If you have ways you've used a self-directed IRA, let me know. I'd be very interested to help us all out to learn better on how to use these tools or other ideas. And if you do decide to use this, let me know which firm you decide to use, because they are pretty powerful. So take care, and we'll be talking later.